Welcome to the Soulful Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Analisa Leaming, Broadway actor turned coach for big dreamers. This is a show about choosing to live inside out, becoming sourced from within, and then acting upon your deepest longings. From starting your dream business to starring on Broadway, from sacred activism to being a radiant, aligned parent and everything in between, we will walk the razor's edge of these two seemingly contradictory words, soulful ambition. This podcast is here to awaken the longing in your chest that is so big it threatens to swallow you whole. Because the manifestation of your true desires is your destined path and the medicine and the magic that the world needs. This is Soulful Ambition. Welcome back to Soulful Ambition. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm really excited to share some personal things with you all today. In hopes that it might really inspire and serve your own seeking and soulful path. Before we do that, just as always, a reminder, I've been sharing a little bit more and kind of like dropping tidbits way before it reaches the podcast through my newsletter. And I know that all of our email inboxes are flooded. And we definitely need to declutter and like what we're not reading and all of that, like unsubscribe. But if this is something that might serve you, I invite you to click the link below wherever you're listening to this or watching this. I send out short, but I believe inspiring and soulfully nourishing emails on Tuesdays. AnalisaLeaming.com as well. You can head there, and you also will get my main character energy practice when you sign up to be on the list. So feel into that. If it feels good and you're curious what's happening over there, I invite you to join me, because what I'm going to share today, I already started speaking about in this love letter that I send out on Tuesdays, finding different words. And I'm just certainly not somebody who is regurgitating things. Not that that's a bad thing. I actually admire people who like write things down and then they share that exact content, repurpose their content in all different places. I think that's probably the working smarter, not harder, maybe, but it's just not my way. Just definitely more like what's coming through in this moment. So we'll see what comes out for today's episode. I also want to say that if you're listening to this in July, there may still be spots for the next round of the Soulful Ambition Circle. And as of right now, there are 2 spots left. And I would like to share with you the direction that we're going right now. Right now, the group is really people, I would say like late 30s, 40s. Many of us are parents, but not all. Everybody has a connection to the creative arts. Not everybody is pursuing it though right now. Some people have taken a break and are now coming back to New York City with children and going after it again in a new way. People have beautiful resumes with a lot of experience, and they're like, well, what do I want now? It's a lot of transition, but people that really connected to these words, soulful ambition. Like, I have these big longings. I might not even know what they are yet, but I love the idea of being in a group. Others are like, oh, I know what I'm here to do, and I want to do it in a different way. And I want to do it in community, and I want to hear other people. I would say from the last group, when we just finished, and when people were reflecting on what the 6-month journey held for them, where they are now versus where they were in January, I think the most common word that I heard was trust. There's this trust in themselves and whatever is arising in a way that they had not experienced that before. And, so, okay, that's beautiful, but what does that really mean? Well, what does it look like when we're not trusting ourselves, when we're second guessing ourselves, when we believe that there's that, like we missed the boat, that the way we're living isn't what we should be doing? There's so many ways that it can show up for us, but what would it look like in your daily life if you trusted yourself a little bit more? And this can just be an exploration. It doesn't mean join the group, although if that's singing to you, I'd love to have you. But, what would it be to trust yourself more? Well, it would mean that we have to create some space to listen and learn to hear that inner voice, those inner whispers, and to not override them. Another thing I've been talking about a lot lately in my own life is like hearing these whispers, but we're so conditioned and patterned to do things in a different way. But we have these like dreams or these nudgings, these like soulful ambitions. And to really begin to trust them and trust whatever's arising every day. To trust ourselves, to not abandon ourselves through criticism, berating ourselves for not being different and better and perfect, all the perfectionism, the procrastination that happens because of all of that, because of how bad we feel, how maybe we feel like we're not on the path, we're not where we should be, knowing like, oh, that ache of unfulfilled potential. And then to begin to trust, like, it's not always going to be unfulfilled. Like, I can do this. And so like, think of all the energy that gets spent in different directions, or how your energy is diffused from not really trusting and listening to that inner wisdom. And so, if you came for that, it would be the right place for you. It's a beautiful group of souls that we're journeying together. Sometimes it's little like kind of hot seat coaching. Other times it's like a share circle, just listening to each other's journeys and stories and wisdom. Other times it's bringing you through practices, meeting shadow aspects of your shadow self, playing with main character energy, for example, figuring out like, what's my way, really discerning like, what's my way to connecting with that inner voice. That I would say is like the bedrock of every single time we meet. We meet twice a month. And so we'll be meeting 5 months, like August through the end of 2024. And so having that consistency, that's another big part of what people spoke about. So twice a month we come together, and that consistency of connecting within and really getting to know your soul and its longings. So if that is singing to you, I would love to have you. You can, again, click, there's a link below wherever you're listening or watching, and you can learn more, apply, or just reach out with questions. Okay. So my intention for this episode is for it to be around 30 minutes long. My intention for this episode is to share what's been going on these last 6 months, because I wish I had a podcast episode to listen to. I'm sure they exist, but not on the ones I was listening to. I wish I could have had a podcast episode of somebody kind of sharing even more about the transition from one identity, especially around career. And when it's no longer like your drive is no longer around your career, that's like really what this is about, and how discombobulating that is. And so last week's episode was where I was coming out of what I really do feel was a dark night of the soul. I actually recently heard it's actually a dark night of the ego. I'm not sure. I still have to sit with that. I can see that. I understand that, but that is interesting. I was coming out of it, and I had this opportunity to sit with a very connected, grounded, enlightened being and ask him some questions. And so this is going to provide a little bit more background. And I hope that if you find yourself in a similar place, or maybe you're a little further along on this and you've landed so deeply, might have you reflect a little bit more on your journey. Or maybe you're not, this isn't there, but like it's going to happen. And so this is going to be a seed in the back of your mind. And maybe someday you'll be like, oh my gosh, wait, I want to go back and listen to that episode of Analisa's, because it was interesting to listen to, but I am still very much in like first kind of phase of life, which I believe is around like, well, very much like me and my dreams and my unique impact in the world, and building the container for the rest of my life. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But maybe that's where you are. And like, hell yes, I definitely could see like 25-year-old Analisa, 30-year-old Analisa listening to this and thinking that it's interesting, but not being able to relate to a lot of this. Being like, oh gosh, I'm just so grateful that I am very clear on what I'm here to do in the world. So I guess I want to start by sharing that, well, I've shared this on the podcast this year and in my newsletters about how, I would actually probably say over the last year, not even just 6 months, but year. So in my priestess training, something that Sabrina would often lead us into these practices. So I did this priestess training through rewilding for women, if you're curious about this and haven't heard me speak about it. But she would take us into this practice occasionally where we were to connect with, like, what is the sacred temple that we are here to build? To be in, to work in. What is the sacred temple? And she's so big on, like, it doesn't have to have anything to do with your career. Like, where are we most called to be these channels for grace, to serve? And I always had two. And one was this work, very much so, like the sacred temple for creatives, big dreamers, to come and land and do it in the most soulful way, to wake up together, to remind ourselves, to be nourished, to come home and not be lost in the ambition and external desires and dreams. But the other one that was just as present and like at the forefront was home. It was like this home. I would always hear it. It was clear as day. These boys that I am raising that are now 1 and 4, my husband, my home. And I would envision myself like gardening and growing vegetables and making kombucha and the kind of play, like the free range parenting, the, very much like hardly any screens on in our home. Really connected to the earth. That was really important. And then it would be like, and that would seep out in the roots of that into community and who would come into our sacred temple here in our home. And it felt so good and so true. And then, kind of coming into the new year, I did this really beautiful practice, again, connecting with like my soul. What is it that you're longing for? What is it that you're most desiring to express and experience? And it was like those words, home, roots, and community. So I got it from the rewilding part, but also just in my own exploration of what is it? What is it? What is it? That's what it is. That's what it is. And if you remember, if you've been here for this part of the journey, I spoke about my resistance. I wrote emails about it. I shared it a little bit on the podcast. Like I had resistance to that. Like, what does that mean? I don't like, I want, but what does it mean for my business and my work in the world? And I would say like that was the extent of it. So then, let's see. I think it was, how do I bring this part into it? Because it's very, very important. Well, basically, when we moved to Castle Rock, this is this could be a very long story and like the main part of the story, and I don't want it to be. But essentially, when we came to Colorado, we'd spent a good bit of time just north of Denver with our very good friends. When I toured with Hello Dolly, we stayed with them once for 2 weeks. They had like a full basement with a kitchen and everything. So we stayed with them while I did the show in Denver. And then another week the next year, we like stayed with them in between cities and, got to explore Boulder and some of these towns north of Denver, like Louisville, and just, of course, loved it. I'm a mountain girl. Like I love it here and thought someday we'll live there. I never thought that it would be as soon as it was, but also, nobody foresaw the whole pandemic and how much that would change all of our lives. So when I found out that I was pregnant again, I knew we wanted to land, and we'd already left New Jersey. We were having this adventure trying to figure out where we wanted to be. And it was like, okay, let's do Denver. Let's do Denver. And we came and we looked. Basically, I was here with my mother-in-law for one weekend, and I was like, we're going to find our house. And we were looking and kind of like you do when you start looking for houses like really close to the city center, and you're like, well, this much money gets me this much house, and like, oh, it's kind of dark and it's older, and we'd lived in 100-year-old home in New Jersey, and we loved the idea of having more space and light and all of this. So anyway, we start looking out a little further and like making our radius a little wider, a little wider, a little wider. And a few people had said like, check out Castle Rock. It's beautiful. It's great. And so after looking at all these homes that just nothing was like a hell yes, we drive down to Castle Rock. It's stunning. It's actually higher elevation than Denver. So you get these like very expansive views. You can see all the way to Pikes Peak, which is an hour south in Colorado Springs. Everything's a little bit like newer and nicer, which really pulled me at that time. And then we walked into what is now our home, and it was like very much right in our budget and everything that I would want in a home. I mean, just open concept, so much space, a beautiful yard, an island, like this big kitchen island I never thought I would have. And it was so nice. I didn't do much research on the town itself because I just thought it's Colorado. Like, our people are in Colorado. It's like people that love nature and probably maybe a little bit more liberally minded, progressive. I don't care about the progressive aspect, right? People. That was not the case. That's all I'll say about that. Look, I'm from Tennessee, and over like almost all of my extended family is very conservative, and you know where I'm going with this. Like, I love them. They're wonderful people. It's not a judgment on that. It's just that it's just not what I was looking for and where I want to raise my kids and school my children and all of that. So, but then cue to the like, it's not smart to sell your home that you just bought, right? Like all these reasons on paper why this is like where we are right now, at least until maybe they're going to start kindergarten. But the whisperings became louder, and it became louder that the more that I realized what it was that I was desiring, I just was like, but this isn't the place. And my sweet partner was like, all right, like I'll explore this with you. And so we start looking at a couple other homes, and I started getting really, really, really excited. Oh, should I tell you all about co-housing? I think I want to tell you about co-housing. I have to really watch the time if I want to keep this in. So I have been interested in co-housing for a decade. It is a Scandinavian concept, European concept that they're kind of like, they're communities of people that are coming together and saying, I want to live in community. And they build together. Like, you have your own home. And I think that's the important thing. It's not a commune. You don't all live in the same house. You're not all sharing a kitchen. You each have your own individual units, whether they're like apartments or what I've seen more and what I went and toured in Denver were townhomes. And then they share like common space, like courtyards, and they have a common house, which has a huge industrial sized kitchen in it. And like the community that I checked out, but this is very common, is they have like community meals once a week, and you sign up to be on the cook crew, and you cook together and you like dine together, and it's intergenerational, and the kids are all out. Like they tend to be more progressive, like inclusivity is very important, and social justice issues are very important, and nature and the environment is very important. So I'm like, oh my God, this is dreamy. So if you remember the episode where I was like, you guys, I have a new dream. This is what I want. Like, that's where that came from. I went and toured this community, and it was like, this is what I'm looking for. This way of living is what I want. And we have the polar opposite of that. Another concept in co-housing that I think is so beautiful is like, they have this one that I looked at, they have this garage, this like shed of shared tools. Because why on God's green earth do we each need our own lawnmower and our own snowblower and our own weed eater? You know, like it's our own sander. We had to buy a sander this year for something. And it's like, you know, I actually did reach out to a neighbor recently to borrow their weed eater. And she was like, oh, we don't have one. And she's literally the only neighbor that I have to reach out to. So, yeah, that didn't go well. But it didn't go well in that I just didn't get what we were asking for. And we're like, great, we got to buy our own weed eater, which is silly. We've lived here for almost 2 years and we don't have one, but just roll with it. Because I'm in denial that we have to do this. I just don't think this is correct. And for those of you that are younger and haven't bought a home yet, like, you feel this probably more than older people listening, because it's like, you're sitting here like, yeah, our generation's not going to be able to buy our own homes. We're going to have to figure out other solutions. So anyway, I could get on that topic and rabbit hole very quickly. I was so excited. And I was just feeling very expansive. Oh, and I heard this beautiful, I was researching it so much, found every co-housing community in Colorado within, a certain radius, and which there are quite a few, like 6 or something. A lot don't have units that are available because, they're highly sought after. You can get on wait lists, you go meet the community and all of that. And then, but so basically, and then I watched this YouTube video by a woman who started one, and they didn't have a unit there. But what she said at the end struck home, and it's why I'm sharing it with you today, is like, this isn't for everybody. And also what we hope is that people take some of the keys and the mission of co-housing, and they bring it into their communities. So like, even in a neighborhood, like, to have, that, this home, they just have all the tools, and we love to like let everybody borrow them. And this one, like, they're the bakers. And if you need anything or help, and like, there's a garden expert, and like, she wants to help everybody and teach them and share, like, sharing skills, sharing tools. It's just such a big part of it. So that everybody can thrive. And that just speaks to me and speaks to my soul so deeply. Long story short, none of these things panned out. We actually did put an offer in on a house. We didn't get it. And then as far as the co-housing community, the one unit that was available, it was just out of our price range. They do have HOAs. So it was like a higher mortgage and all of this. And it's also just like sitting down and looking at the facts, like, it just didn't make sense to sell our house right now. We've only been in it a year and a half. And I made peace with it. There were tears because I was like, I want this so badly. Okay. Well, I just have to find a way to make Castle Rock work. Like, this is what it's going to be. And when I look back at when like the real dark night of the soul started, it was then. Didn't know then. It didn't happen overnight, but slowly but surely, it felt like life force energy was draining until I kind of like woke up and realized I was very depressed. And this wasn't postpartum depression. Like, I knew it wasn't postpartum. But here's the other thing. So while all of that was happening, y'all, in January, I was prepping for the symphony gig. That was go time for the rebrand of my website. Like, a $6,000 investment. So I was working really hard. You could say I was hustling, like writing copy, getting testimonials, like doing everything that I needed to do. I had so many deadlines. I was working with my coach, finishing up my mastermind. I went out to LA. Then I did the symphony gig. So I'm learning a ton of music. I have my regular work hours with my clients, and I have 2 small children that are still not sleeping through the night, most nights. What else? Gosh, I did workshops. I did the workshop in person in New York City. I had that gig to prepare for. So over 5 months, I wasn't doing anything to nourish and nurture and go into home and community and roots. And in fact, I think that those areas, this is what I wrote in my email last week, was like, those areas were getting what was left of me after I continued to focus on building my business and my work in the world, rebranding the podcast, becoming Soulful Ambition. I was working with a podcast company on the cover art, the new music, all of that. So much work goes into all of this, and all of that at the same time. And a lot of times I was working after the kids went to bed. So my sleep was totally fakaked. I was staying up too late. I was having to get up very early. But again, it doesn't, I wish, it just, we don't know what we don't know. And in my mind, that's what all needed to happen. And maybe it did to set me up for where I am now, right? Like trusting in the perfection, trusting that it led me into the dark night of the soul that I needed to have to wake, as I wrote, wake the F up to what I'm really here to do and what really matters. So darkness, despondency, not caring about anything, and having this desire to burn it all down. And what I mean by that, I'd never experienced before, but I just had gotten to this point of like, something has to give. I cannot continue this way. Continuing to be so isolated in community. We're spending these weekends with these small children and we don't really have many friends. That's such a big piece of it. I don't see people in person. And longing for that and knowing how important that is. My sleep was so out of whack. So then like my cravings are really bad and I'm putting things in my body that I don't want to be eating. But it was so deeply out of whack. The pendulum had swung so far. I want to share a couple pivotal moments here that were really important to me. One was I met with my group from Priestess Training that we still meet on Tuesday nights. And I came and it was dark. And I just shared from that place. And Leona, who's in that group and also has been on the podcast 2 times, looked at me. The love that they all had for me and held me in was so nourishing and exactly what I needed. But Leona said 2 things to me that really unlocked something. And she said, I'm so glad you came. I'm so glad you're here. Your vibe is not bringing down this group. You are perfect exactly as you are. And you are so welcome here exactly as you are. And especially as somebody who just has such an identity as a positive person and one who brings light, that was a balm to my soul and allowed me to relax in a way that I probably hadn't relaxed in a while. And then she also said, and I also want you to know that what you're feeling right now, I know it feels like it's always going to be this way. And I promise you that it's not. And I didn't realize that is how I'd felt. There was a part of me questioning, what have I done? How did I get myself here? In these suburbs, so disconnected from people I love. How did I get, almost what did I do wrong? I was looking at homes again back in New Jersey where we moved from and wondering, should I just go back to performing? Truly, I was back there again, even though I didn't want to. One night I went on Indeed and I was looking at jobs. And one of the jobs I actually clicked through and was I could apply for this was an insurance job. Just to give you a little insight. There's so much more I could share. That was so profound. And that allowed me to go into my darkness in a way that I hadn't yet. And what I experienced in that time, we put on music together. We do our own practices together. It changes every week. But the practice that I took myself into was led me into this darkness and accepting it and going, okay, what is here? What do you have for me? If I decide that nothing is wrong, then there's a reason this is here. And so I bow to you and I honor you and I won't fight this anymore. And I'm not going to try to look externally at what I need to fix to feel better. I surrender to this and I will be in this and I will sit in this as long as I am meant to or need to. So for anybody there, for me, that was a game changer. And then that opened up external things started to shift without me pushing. The teachers came, the podcasts came, everything that I needed came. And one of those was, I actually met with a psychologist and she said, really sounds like you're describing second half of life stuff. Check out this podcast that just came out on the Huberman Lab with Dr. James Hollis, who's a Jungian analyst. So I'm out there weeding and doing yard work. It's really funny that I talked about needing a weed eater because truth, y'all, I got scissors and I cut the edges of my lawn because I'm so in resistance to buying a weed eater. Oh, that's really funny. I didn't put that together. So I'm out there weeding working with my hands, which I knew would be good for me, in the earth, and listening to this podcast. And I was like, thank you. Because he talks about depression. And he talks about 3 different kinds of depression. And he talks about depression that's chemical imbalance, clinical depression. He talks about depression from acute circumstances like death of a family member or divorce. And then he talks about depression that is caused from the soul because you're repressing a part of your soul. And I knew there was no question. I didn't need to meet with an expert to say, is this right for me? I just knew. That's 100% what is happening. And around the same time, I just became devoted to my nervous system, to working on my gut, because all of our neurotransmitters, like the happy, our happy chemicals flowing through our body, like hormones and all of that, are like 70% of them created in our gut. I started devoting myself to working on my sleep, going to bed at like 9:30 and waking up at 5:30, like really this circadian rhythm with the sun, that nothing else mattered to me. Like, this is the most important thing, my sleep, what I'm putting in my body, and really making sure that my nervous system is regulated, which is very challenging with 2 young children that are screaming at you for oatmeal at 6 a.m. So, I knew that is what was happening. And so one of the things that I was doing, another thing that I did, was I have to get sunshine and fresh air an hour a day before noon. So I would go on these long walks before I broke my toe, and without listening to podcasts, like without the input. I knew the importance of listening. And once I'd surrendered to the darkness, I just was like, okay, like, what's here? Teach me, show me through nature. Like, let me see whatever it is. Or I am okay being in the unknown. Truly, I wasn't looking for a way out. I just kept saying, like, I'm here. I'm here with whatever is. I can sit in the pain. I can sit in the suffering. Again, just such magic and medicine. That's when it became clear. Holy shit, Analisa, you have been building and building and building. One of my business goals was to double my income by doubling my impact, which is so beautiful to say. I think it sounds so great. And it is so not my truth. I have no desire right now in this season of life to double my impact or my income. And I don't need to. I'm very, very blessed in that way. And so that was a wake-up call. And I reached out to my business coach and I said that we were going to stop working together. And she was understanding, and the weight that lifted, it was like the light that came in from that realization. And I'm making it really short because I want to wrap this up for now today. But it was big. And it was, talking with my partner. Is this true? Is this correct? I just built this whole website and the new podcast. And it was like, yes, right now, that is not home, roots, and community. My kids are going to be in full-time school in the next couple of years. This is the time to be here. Oh, and then all this feminist stuff came up in me that I realized there was a part of me that doesn't value that as much. I've been taught to not value it as much, and I didn't realize that there was that bias and this, and I had to really reckon with, what that meant about myself, not being ambitious Annie, which is what I called myself since I was 6th grade. And so then how ironic, ambitious Annie is hosting a podcast called The Soulful Ambition, which is really what I'm up to. What is my soulful ambition right now? And I know that's going to change. And I know it's going to come back out and become more external at some point. But I'm becoming more and more comfortable and committed to what it means to be here right now. And so really stepping back and going anything extra, I still want to keep this work going. I'm still podcasting. I'm still here. I'm still working with my clients that I love, doing this next round of Soulful Ambition, which I love. And we are in the work together and in the community together. But anything extra, no extra workshops. I'm not going to be on social media trying to create content every day. I don't know. We'll see what else comes up. But for now that, but also just what I had been doing and working on with my coach, which was okay, so this is my goal of how I want to grow my business and the programs that I want to have. And that's just all done. We're done. We're done. We're just going to continue as we are. No building externally. So that was a big shift. And then on one of my walks, this is the last big point that I will leave us on today. On one of my walks, I was like, what are we doing here? We have to leave. I cannot be here anymore. It is so clear to me. And I was like, why don't we go rent somewhere else? I came home. I talked to my husband about it. I was like, what if we just go rent? We don't have to buy. We can sell our house now, sit on that money until we're ready to buy, until interest rates come down, et cetera. He's like, okay. And then like later that day, he was like, what if we just rent out our house and go rent somewhere else? Long story shorter, long story longer. That's what we're doing. We have a rental. We are moving a week from today of recording this. When this comes out, we're going to be moving that month. We're moving up to just north of Denver, very close to Boulder. There's so many beautiful synchronicities that have been happening that have just been like, yep, you're on the right path. Yep, you're on the right path. We found a renter for our house by one little post I did on Facebook asking a question about renters. Somebody was like, wait, I'm interested. So we didn't have to go through anybody. We're just taking care of it ourselves. I wrote the contract. I went and found a place for us to live. I'm actually leaving right after this to go tour some schools, some preschool programs for my son. And my vitality is back, y'all. You know, I said when we decided like, okay, I guess we're not moving, how I felt like it was just slowly the life force energy being drained. And that depression that I knew when I listened to that podcast, which I'll link to below because it's phenomenal. And I think everyone should listen to it. That like sometimes we are depressed because it is the way of the soul communicating to us. And now with this redirection and knowing and what my priorities are and the sacred temple that I am focused on nourishing and living in and loving, even though it's hard, my life force is back. This is like maybe TMI, but I don't care. Like my libido is back. Like my creativity is back, but it's like I'm really focusing it on the home. And I'm like actually in the kitchen doing the things that I want to be doing in the kitchen. It's not perfect. It is not linear. There are some days when I wake up less alive than others and I'm like, oh no, am I going back? You know, so just want to paint that picture too. It's life. Life is messy and gray. And I didn't go from black to white, but I can say I'm out of the black. And I'll find my way there again. And I bet there will not be the resistance that there was this last time. I hope that this finds you on your path and just inspires you wherever you are to keep listening. Keep listening and honoring. And we need each other. We aren't meant to do this by ourselves. We really are pack animals. The community aspect is so important. I read a statistic, and I'm going to butcher it because I don't remember it. I actually looked back for it recently and I couldn't find it. But it was a statistic about the people that have rich community in their lives. It's as if they make, let's just say, another like $80,000 a year. It's like to that equivalent. And the importance of it to our health, our mental health, our physical health. We continue to be more and more and more isolated. The more we do everything online only, the more we have access to everything ourselves. We don't need anybody, but we do. Like that is how we are wired. We really, really, really do. And there is this coming into second half of life. I'll bring it back to turning 40 this year. That just feels like the ambitious Annie. That was where I was meant to be. I was building. I was in such a building phase. And now I feel like I'm in a deepening phase, in a phase like where relationships and connections are everything to me. And so like, that's what I'm ambitious for. I'm going to continue to create and be a part of community in a deeply meaningful, impactful way, both the community that I do host online, and that is powerful. I share the power of my own community with priestess training, right? Like that changed my life. So that matters. And the community, though, that I'm really being called to build or not build, but be a part of that already exists in person. I wish you all a beautiful, beautiful week. I would love to hear from you, like how this resonated, where you are in your life, anything that you want to share. It would be so beautiful to connect on. And if this served, please share it with a friend, write a review. As I always say, it's like tips for a podcaster, and it means so much. All right. Have a beautiful week or day whenever you're listening to this, and I will see you back here on Soulful Ambition.